Welcome to Doctrine and Devotion, a podcast exploring Christian faith and practice from a Reformed Baptist perspective. My name is Joe Thorne. I'm the lead pastor of Redeemer Fellowship in St. Charles, Illinois.
And I'm Jimmy Fowler, executive pastor at Redeemer Fellowship.
Hey.
Hey.
What's going on, buddy?
I'm still getting over this cold.
Oh, man, I love it. It's my favorite.
Why is it your favorite?
You know why.
I disagree
We've
with
been
why
talking
you
about
think
it.
you
I had it up earlier.
Stop
dude,
it.
You sound like Seth Rogen.
Who's no one knows who Seth
you
Rogen
do.
is.
You
No
do.
one cares. You can't even figure out your technology. Oh, you figured it out. He figured out his technology. I do not sound like him.
You sound like Seth Rogen.
I'm not going to laugh.
And I'll be honest, Seth Rogen, he might be smarter than you. That's the scary thing.
Why? Maybe.
Really,
I have no answer for that. I can't sit here and say he's not because that's just rude.
Have you ever seen a Seth Rogen movie, though?
Have I ever seen a Seth Rogen movie?
Be honest. Don't let our guests...
I've seen him in a show.
Mm-hmm. You've seen
Back
every
in the day,
Seth Rogen movie.
Okay,
you've seen every Seth Rogen movie, probably. It's all right. I don't judge you. Some
I feel
of our
like you're
listeners
judging
will.
me.
No, I'm just setting you up to be judged. I'm setting you up to be judged by other people.
No, I'm not going to sit here and answer any of your questions.
So you ready to preach? I saw you working on your sermon. Yeah,
I'm ready. Yeah? No, I'm not on one sheet yet, but I'll get there.
Yeah, cool. Well, you're ready to put it on one sheet, though.
Yes, I am ready to put it on one sheet.
All right, cool.
So I'm just about there.
Everybody knows.
Another couple hours.
The way that we preach is we do all the work in our journals. It takes multiple pages, but what we do is we boil it all down to one sheet.
Yep.
All of our notes have to fit on that one sheet, and that goes into our Bible, and we preach from that. And so that's how you know we're ready to go. Jimmy's ready to put it on one sheet, so you could preach it now.
I could preach it now, but I need about 2 hours to... an hour.
You got an hour.
About an hour. I'm just trying to...
Stretch it out. Act like you spend all that time.
No, I just can't.
Yeah.
That way, if someone's listening and they hear the sermon, they're like, oh, look at all the time he put into
you need to undersell. I didn't have enough time.
Right.
That way they go, yeah.
I had no time.
There you go.
It's going to be horrible.
You got to hedge your bets.
That's right.
All right, so listen. It's kind of cool.
It's not kind of. It's really cool.
It's very cool. We got a special guest, and not just on the phone. Like Tom Askell was on the phone.
Yeah, Joel McDermott
on the phone.
Paul Maxwell that one time on the phone.
But then when he was here, he took his shirt off. He was flexing his muscles. It was awkward.
It was really awkward. He's got to stop doing that.
We have Julie Royce here. Now, Julie Royce, I know I keep saying Royce, and she's going to correct me. For those of you that do not know, Julie is a journalist, an author, and a speaker. She's the author of Redeeming the Feminine Soul, God's Surprising Vision for Womanhood. And for 6 years, Julie hosted a live call-in talk show at Moody Radio. It's called Up for Debate, and it was the kind of radio show that you should listen to. Where
it's not like one of those slap on the back ones.
Yeah, like, hey, here's my buddy, what's up, man?
It's not like Doctrine and Devotion.
Yeah, we don't have people on that we don't like.
Yeah,
we only have people on that we like.
That's pretty much
it's easy. Yeah, but just not that you didn't like people, but Julie would have people on that she would disagree with. She'd have opposing views on, and get into it. Some of you may know. Most recently, Julie's investigative journalism has led her to write about Harvest Bible Fellowship and Pastor James MacDonald right here in the Chicagoland area. And so we wanted to talk to her today about journalism, the local church, and church health and things like that. Julie, thank you so much for not just agreeing to talk to especially Jimmy and I.
What do you mean, especially Jimmy and I? Why'd you put me first on that?
I'm a published author. I'm a published author. I got
all right, he's got,
books.
Listen, Julie, he's got little pamphlets.
Oh, but if you stack them together, it's like one book.
Have you heard one of his books? Yeah, this is awkward.
Okay, hang on,
that is awkward right there. How do you like that, Joe? How do you like that? She's from Moody. She's a Moody author herself. She don't even know nothing about you. And you're going to sit here and judge and talk down on me? Are you going to give her, are you going to sign it for her?
These are from Crossway.
Oh, look at this.
Oh, wow.
Hey, I like Crossway.
See?
I do like
Crossway.
Crossway.
You like Crossway?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there you go. Crossway. You're welcome, Crossway Publishers.
They're very conservative.
Yes, they
very
are.
Biblical.
They don't play.
You don't have to be kind and keep
you
those.
have to.
No,
You'll hurt my feelings.
I would like to
You don't
keep
have to
them.
read them. Just take them, and I don't care.
Just
Throw them in your
pretend.
trunk. I don't care. So anyways, Julie, thank you. And let me just apologize on the front end before we get into this. Jimmy probably smells like cigars. If you're smelling cigars right now, I apologize. Let's just
That's
blame
not
Jimmy.
me.
Okay,
That's
whatever,
you.
dude. Whatever.
I've been at work all day.
Yeah, so anyways,
Okay,
I apologize.
which did you go to the cigar shop today?
Is the Pope Catholic?
Then yes,
There
he
you go.
did. So it's
Okay.
not me, it's him. I want to
Just wanted to apologize for Jimmy. So thank you for coming in. We have a bunch of questions, and what we really want to do is sort of introduce this issue of of journalism in the context of what's happening right now with Harvest Bible Fellowship.
I mean Harvest Bible Chapel.
Chapel, yeah.
Fellowship was the church planting network that
yes.
Harvest Bible Chapel is no longer a part of.
Right, well, it doesn't exist anymore.
Now it's Great
so
Commission.
GCC, I think, right?
Yeah, but that's no longer affiliated with Harvest
Right,
Bible
it's
Chapel.
completely
right,
separate.
completely
right.
independent.
Not related at all. Okay, so maybe you could introduce for us this idea of investigative journalism and what it is, because you write books, you appear on NPR, you address various issues. You don't just talk about feminism or women. You talk about a whole host of things theologically, like any good theologian should. But here, there's been a couple of situations this year where you've sort of dived into this investigative journalism. Can you explain to us what that is? What is investigative journalism, and how is it appropriate for Christians to sort of engage in that discipline or in that vocation?
Well, I think journalism is actually biblical. The very first journalist is in the Bible. Do you know who that is?
You gonna say Luke?
Yeah, exactly. Because he went, what is he says, I'm going to make
An orderly account.
Theophilus, right? And so for his buddy, he's writing an orderly account so that he may know that these things are true. And so Luke, unlike the other gospel writers were eyewitnesses. Luke wasn't an eyewitness, but he went and interviewed the eyewitnesses. He took their stories and then he put them into this account. And really, I look at that as the first journalist was Luke. And
that's good.
I remember in college, I was at Wheaton College, and when that idea is my first journalism course, Intro to Journalism, and my prof said that, and that our job as journalists was to seek the truth. And to me, that took it to a really high calling, because now we are to tell the truth, and everything we do is about the truth. And even when I was in college at Wheaton, I had to do for this class, it was an investigative type, in-depth report, I think it was called. And my friend Pam, used to be Felsky, now it's new. We were partners in this whole thing, and we happened to stumble on this story about things that were happening at the Office of Christian Outreach. Somebody said, hey, you need to ask for the money and what's happening with the money.
And this was an institution on Wheaton's campus?
It was on Wheaton's campus.
Oh, goodness, yeah.
And somebody gave us this tip, you really need to look into this. And I remember going in, and none of these people are still there. So, I mean, I'm not meaning to disparage the school. I graduated a very, very long time ago. We won't say when, but it was a very long time ago. So none of the same players are there. But I remember going in and just asking for a budget, and they're like, and they denied me the budget. And I said, well, wait, this isn't right. These public donations. I should get a budget, And I engaged with her. I mean, nice, but I was like, I should have a budget.
Just pressing in.
And I remember the director came out and just started screaming at me. And I remember just being unnerved. I mean, I'm a college student, right? And I come out of the office and I'm shaking, and then I'm angry. And I'm saying, this is not right. I should be able to see that. And because I had just gone on a missions trip, and my parents had given to this mission trip. And I remember the whole time them saying they needed more money. And then I found out they had an abundance of money. Right. And that, it had funded a trip and some other things. And, it was all legal, but it was just...
You already made sensitive to the fact that these kinds of things, these kind of abuses happen.
Exist.
Right. And so, I mean, to me, did I get into investigative journal? I didn't set out to be an investigative journalist. I set out to tell the truth. And really, I didn't expect this year to be this year. I had just published a book, Redeeming the Feminine Soul, a year ago, September. And I was thinking this was going to be the set up the conferences and the speaking engagements. And I was passionate about the book, and I was all set to go. And then, I actually...
And you stepped in it.
I did. And it was people coming to me.
Yeah.
There's people coming to me and saying, would you please report this? And would you hear our stories? And this is going on. And I knew it's kind of like you get in those situations and you realize I've been given the tools to do something. God's given me a platform that I can use. And so I've just tried to the best of my ability to steward the information people have given me and the gifts that God's given me and the training he's given me. And so it's led me to this really messy kind of situation, but it really is about truth seeking.
Now, maybe you could, in a very brief statement, summarize for us, and we're not going to make this all about James MacDonald and all of that. When people talk about this issue of harvest and James MacDonald, could you just summarize what is the issue? What is all the hubbub about in its most essential form?
That's hard to do. The World Magazine article that I did had 4,000 words. Well, it was 3,000 with a sidebar, which was about 1,000. And literally, I feel like I could write a book on some of this. But to put it in a nutshell, it's about abuse. It's about financial abuse, abusing the money that people have given you and using it for, one of the things I reported on is how he said he was going to downsize, and then he upsized to this, 6,900 square foot house with
very nice though.
It's extremely nice with a 10-car garage, and he's a pastor, and these are monies coming from the church, and that's all. Is that abuse of the money? I think at least there should be transparency. And I think the lengths to which he went, where he told us it's less than 5,000 square feet. And then I happened to get a drawing from the assessor's office. I'm like, this isn't 5,000.
Yeah, right here. It shows it's not.
And then the Harvest Bible Fellowship, here was this network, church planting network, and he dissolved it in one day. So I mean, one, that leaves questions of church government. How is it that the senior pastor, if this is an elder-led church, could completely disband this organization they've had since 2002 that has over 150 independent churches in one day? And then you find out that it's about financial mismanagement. It's about when they go in for a financial review of realizing there's $573,000 that have been appropriated for overhead. And when they ask about the overhead, it's like, it seems almost arbitrary, according to, some of the people that I interviewed, including the financial director of Harvest Bible Fellowship. And so I think you have that financial piece. And then you have Walk in the Word, which is the broadcast ministry of James MacDonald. And you find Walk in the Word funds, $1 million from Walk in the Word taken to settle accounts and liabilities for Harvest Bible Fellowship when they're closing it.
How does financials go from one ministry to the next without that trailer accountability?
And then you've got a video for Walk in the Word where James MacDonald says that every change partner, and change partners are your monthly giver, and he says to them, every dollar you give goes to buy airtime. And then you find out, not only did they transfer $1 million, but Walk in the Word funds paid for a deer herd at Camp Harvest, a deer herd, and I don't know the exact amount that cost. I know the initial investment was around $15,000 to buy some does. You get these breeder bucks for these whitetail trophy deers. I mean, those are very expensive, maybe $15,000, $20,000 right there. So you have this financial, but then you have the abuse of human beings. And I think that's what drew me in first, was people coming to me and telling me their stories. This one pastor, for example, that because he planted a church nearby, after he left Harvest, they wanted him to sign, and this is a whole discussion right here. Non-compete agreements. You can't plant a church within 50 miles. Like, don't lead people to the Lord too close to our church. I mean, really, the fields are white for harvest, are they not? And so this idea that we're competing with other churches. I mean, I found that odd. But then because he didn't do this, his kids were kicked out of the school. He ended up getting kicked out of his daughter's 8th grade graduation. Then I had stories these ones were just bizarre of James, according to, and all of these, because it says in 1 Timothy, you don't bring a charge against an elder without the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. And all of these were corroborated by 2 or 3 witnesses at least. But we have accounts of him where he supposedly saw a picture of a pastor up on the wall at Camp Harvest, and somebody who'd fallen out of favor, no longer on staff, and he takes a butter knife and stabs the thing. According to, now he denies he did it. He said, I may have put the knife up to it and into it, right? But we have other people saying, no, he stabbed it multiple times to make a point. And then you also have video, supposedly of him. Now, I've seen some of the video, but a videographer who left recently in 2017 because of the way he was treating high school students, calling them morons and stupid, and supposedly, according to this videographer, physically threatening them and berating them, mocking them. I mean, this is not a way a pastor acts. And it needs to be, I think, called out.
It's not a way It's not a way a man or a woman should act. But especially anybody in leadership, right, who has been given and entrusted that responsibility for shepherding people.
Yeah.
But let's play devil's advocate here a little bit.
Well, what I'm thinking here is like, well, Julie, I mean, as we go, like we look online and we follow and we see some of the pushback that you've been getting, right? People saying that you're kind of hurting the church, you're hurting people, that you're not helping, that you're spreading gossip, and that you're stepping outside of the Matthew 18 process. How do you respond to that? Like, these allegations from those that are these criticisms, I would say, from people online or even from the church, that you're hurting, not helping, spreading gossip, not going through the process correctly.
Well, first of all, I'm very thankful for my journalism professor who told me once, if you're not getting any hate mail, Julie, you're probably not saying anything. So I keep that in mind when I get some of these nasty
Paul
things.
Maxwell, all that hate that you get, see, be thankful.
But there is truth to that. I think when you're speaking the truth, you're going to step on some toes. But when it comes to Matthew 18 principle, people talked about this a lot.
Right.
And even when I reported the stuff on Moody, actually, I tried to follow that, but I honestly don't think that's what Matthew 18 is about. Matthew 18 is about a personal offense. It's not about somebody in authority abusing their authority over a church. And I think that passage has been so misused, and it's gotten to the point where you have a young person in a church who might be abused by somebody, in power terms, much greater than her. And yet she's asked to go to that person one-on-one, the pastor.
Yeah.
I mean,
and there's no witness anyways.
Yeah.
By herself. So
it's really, I think
how is she supposed to do anything?
That's been, I think, misapplied. But I think as much as I can, I do, like with the Moody situation, before I reported on that, I went directly to the trustees. I met directly with the trustees. I begged them to deal with this. And it was only after I saw that they were so compromised that I realized this isn't going to happen unless we go public. But here's the passage I never hear talked about, is First Timothy 5.
Yeah.
19 and 20. How come we never hear that? We hear all the time Matthew 18, right? And it's so often by the people in authority who are not wanting to be called out, right?
Yeah, they're so quick to try to jump back at you.
But nobody talks about 1 Timothy 5. And this is critical. It says, when you have an elder. Now, first, it starts with that you only consider accusations against an elder with, 2 or 3 witnesses.
Yeah.
So we don't consider, and I've had people call me with all sorts of crazy stories. And I listen, but then I go to corroborate. And if it's not there, I don't report it. There's a lot of stuff I don't report. But when you see that this is a valid accusation, and in this case for Harvest, 8 former elders sent a letter to the elder board complaining about James MacDonald's character. Within 24 hours, instead of investigating what those 8 elders brought, within 24 hours, those elders in 2013 that were on the elder board, instead of investigating, and they said in that letter, those 8 former elders, we have witnesses, which we're glad to bring in specific accounts. Instead of doing that investigation and bringing them in, which I've talked to, all but one, but I've talked to him through another one. He communicated with me. But they all expected. They expected that this investigation would happen. And instead, within 24 hours, 2 of them were excommunicated and a 3rd censured. And so we're not following 1 Timothy 5. And when you have an elder that is sinning, you're supposed to, what it says is publicly expose him,
right,
so that the others may stand in fear.
Right.
When you have a position of authority, you have an incredible trust. And I know you 2 men, as your position as being pastors, probably feel that. You've been entrusted with a spiritual office, and the standard is so high for you. And if you are there sinning and abusing money or abusing people or abusing the scripture, you need to be held accountable. And if you're doing it and you've been confronted repeatedly, as in this case, there's accounts that go back 10, 15, 20 years. If that's happening and that is not being dealt with, yes, there does need to be a public exposure.
We have a friend, Matt Carabini. He works for the Daily Wire. I don't know if you know Daily Wire.
I do.
Right,
yeah.
So of course you like Ben Shapiro and all that stuff. So do we. So Matt works for Daily Wire, and so we had mentioned online that you were coming and talking to us tonight, and he said, "Why are we going against MacDonald so much lately? Will you guys discuss the importance of it? Because honestly, I don't see it. Let the local church duke it out. And I can understand where he's coming from, like let the local church handle it. And my response is sometimes a local church can be led by men unaccountable.
Yeah.
And isn't that one of the fundamental issues here, that there is a large degree of unaccountable leadership that has led to the abuses that you've talked about?
Well, I think some of this gets to a question of ecclesiology, really. I mean, because we're not dealing with the Catholic Church where there's a magisterium that we can appeal to, right? And in the case of Harvest Bible Chapel, you're talking about a church. Now, it's a cooperating church in a Southern Baptist Convention.
Which is a whole other discussion.
Yeah. Jimmy and I have
what does that even mean?
We're having heart attacks over this.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to be able to sit down with JD and be like, come on, JD.
Bro.
Bruh.
They voting on anything? There's no congregational principles?
That is not a...
we'll talk about it later.
Fine.
So...
You don't have to be a Calvinist, but you got to be congregational.
I agree.
Right.
I agree. We have traditionalists, we have Calvinists. We could get... But at least we agree on that. We agree on congregationalism.
Yeah.
All right.
Go.
Sorry.
Jim.
All right. No, I feel you. I get it. I mean... I do think there's questions of church government that do come up with this whole thing. Because what we've got in evangelicalism with so many of these independent churches, and there's no denomination, there's no bishop they're accountable to, there is in essence a public trust.
Yeah.
Right? And there's an understanding, there's a public trust. And when you have a church or an elder board in this case where things are broken down, where they're not holding the pastor accountable. Yeah. I mean, we have numerous former elders saying that this is a puppet elder board. And you also, looking at the church government, the elder board at Harvest, you can read the bylaws. You can go online and read them. I'm not making this stuff up. There are about 30 elders, right, on the elder board.
Correct.
But they don't have any authority over the finances, any authority over the legal deals, all of that. That's done by what's called the Executive Committee, which are 4 or 5 men, the officers of the church, and James MacDonald. Okay? Well, and there's no ratification. It's okay to set like all the compensation for all the top officers in a committee or in a, something like that. But you got to get it ratified by the big board.
Correct.
But we have elders who are there who resigned saying, I got a pie chart. That's all I got. And when I asked for what did the guys make, what did the senior officers make, I was denied that.
So one piece of the pie is just staff.
In fact,
right?
one of those, Dan Marquardt, one of the former elders, told me, he said that he was told, you know what, I'd rather lose 100 sheep before I tell you that. And it's that kind of lack of transparency and all that. There's when you have a breakdown of trust, and when you have at a church nearby, Dave Jones is at Village Church of Barrington, and he said, I've got 100 to 150 people who have come to my church for a significant amount of time who show signs of spiritual abuse. Yeah. And they've come from Harvest. And so when you have that going on and you have a breakdown, there doesn't seem to be this kind of holding accountable by the elders at the top. And again, I, as a journalist, I don't go in with a preconceived notion. I listen to those. We listened to James MacDonald and what he had to say. We got his side of the story. We reported that. People can go and look at that World magazine story I did. They can go to my blog and see what I reported just recently, which are text messages. This is from my latest one, was text message from the chairman, the former chairman of the Executive Committee. He's a current elder saying that an elder update that was just put out there, I didn't even read it. I had nothing to do with that. And this is an elder update that's talking about how the elders feel about everything and how they're getting along with the senior pastor. And he's saying, James and I completely disagree on what elder oversight even means. Right. And then you have him saying that elder update, well, that's nothing more than, I forget the exact quote, something like an attempt to run a cult.
Yeah.
And control the masses. When that is happening at a church, that is no small thing. And when that church has, more than 12,000 attenders, and when that pastor has a broadcast ministry reaching millions of people, well then, and this is, as a journalist, I was always trained in this, it's the public's right to know. Yeah. And you're always weighing the public right to know against, right to privacy and all these other things. But this is a huge, to me, the question of, does the public have a right to know? Do the people who are giving, they just had a capital campaign there, And people gave, what I understand, pledged $29 million.
Oh, goodness.
These are people giving sacrificially of their own money to this church. Do they have a right to know how things are spent? Do they have a right to know how things are governed? Do they have a right to know when they're giving to walk in the Word, how that money is being spent? Because they're thinking every dollar goes to getting out the good news of Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah.
I think they have a right to know.
I think that's really important here is that when we're talking about like this whole Matthew 18 or 1 Timothy, and people talk about, like Matt was talking about being in private, this is something that's out in the public sphere and needs to be dealt with in a public way, right? And I think that's the part that sometimes people forget in the midst of all this is something that's larger. And yeah, I think we see some of these things happening I'm sure we do see some of these things happening at a smaller church. And that needs to be dealt with as well. But when it's at this scale with what we're talking about here, you're right. I think it's a public issue.
I mean, we're big believers in and transparency, and it's not because we're super awesome theologians and super virtuous, though we are. It's because we're dangerous. Like, if I had yes men around me telling me that I'm the best and whatever you want, boss, I would make terrible mistakes. But I'm the lead pastor here, but I don't have more authority than anybody else. The volunteer, the staff, all have the same authority, and they shoot me down all the time.
All the time.
Horrible So ideas. Are you congregational here? Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So the elders lead, and we make a lot of decisions, but the church votes on any leadership. So elders, deacons, anybody serving in an official capacity,
officers,
like that. Yeah. So any officers of the church, they vote on membership, in, out, including church discipline, and they vote on budget. That's not a biblically required one, I don't think, but I think it's very wise to do that. We disclose salaries, everything. Everything is out there for everybody to see. It's uncomfortable, but I think that's really good. And so the reason we operate with parity, equality of authority among the elders, whether they're volunteer or not, and all of that is because I'm dangerous. We're dangerous. Like, inherently, we're sinful. And so I need guys around me that will say, that's a bad idea, dude. Like, you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else. So it's not that we're virtuous. It's not that we're like theologically right, though I think we are theologically right in our congregational model with elders who are leading. I think it's biblically necessary because of the sinful tendencies of men and women. So that's why we push for it, and a lot of us have come from backgrounds where we've seen abusive pastors.
Yeah, we've been under abusive leadership. Yeah,
you've made the rounds. You went through a few different cycles.
Oh my goodness!
You just kind of kept going deeper into the
I don't know what
Dante's
happened.
Inferno
I was
of
in the
church
wrong
leadership.
Town.
Yeah,
that's all.
Canada. That's all you need to know.
You know what? They're passive until they want to abuse you.
Yeah, they're passive aggressive.
Actually, you know what? The ones that were the abusive ones were from out of country.
But they went to Canada because that's where all the suckers are.
Yeah.
There you go.
Now I think of it, those pastors were from out of country.
Yeah. And they find where all the nice people are. Sorry.
Yeah, no one else. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry. Whatever you say.
Sorry.
All right. So
it's about time.
Julie, you're talking about local church stuff, and we're linking to all this stuff in the show notes. So you need to check out Julie's articles, World Magazine, stuff on her website and her blog. Really helpful stuff. All the stuff that she's been referring to here is documented and online for you to read. So we'll have links to that. Mira, you're talking about local churches and transparency and accountability. Are you a member of a local church? Obviously, you're in the area because you're hanging out with us here at Redeemer Fellowship tonight. But are you a member of a local church? And if you are, you don't have to tell us which church. Privacy might be a good thing for you right now. So a bunch of haters out there. And what do your leadership, what does the leadership of the church think about what you do for a living?
I am a member of a church. And actually, I know Harvest reached out to them.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, no, that's what I would do. I think I would probably make the same play. Yeah.
But honestly, it was after they had already appealed to the courts. They had already filed a lawsuit. Well, they I guess reached out to them before the lawsuit, but before my pastors even had a chance to respond, because I remember my pastor called me. I think it might have been the day they filed the lawsuit against me. And he's like, Julie, I just got this thing from Harvest Bible, Chapel, and what should I do? Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, they just filed a lawsuit against me. So I think they kind of just bypassed that whole entire church work it out thing and just filed a lawsuit. So, I mean, at that point, they had kind of skipped past that entire process. But again, I didn't see anything to work out because I didn't even publish anything yet.
Yeah.
So what do they think about like the fact that you are calling attention to what you perceive to be and others perceive to be abuses in leadership. Is your church leadership supportive of you in that, or are they critical of you in that?
You know what? My church leadership will ask me questions, will ask me hard questions. And we've had hard discussions. And I think honestly, they're working through, this is all new territory for them.
Oh, I bet.
This year's been,
thanks, Julie.
Yeah, no, I've probably taken up more of their time than they really wanted. Not because I wanted to, but right. I mean, it's just these sorts of things have come up. And actually I have a board, and I did that voluntarily for the same reasons that you talked about. Is I felt like here I am, I'm a journalist, and in many ways I'm a freelancer, and I've got this platform that God's given me, and I want to steward that well. That's really important to me. And so I want people speaking into my life. And actually one of the guys on my boards actually, I go to an Anglican church. So, and he's actually a priest. I
bet I know where you go.
Yeah, well, you may. But we've known each other ever since college. I mean, and so our families would vacation together, really, really good friends. We know each other well. Our spiritual journeys, he and his wife and my husband and I have been really intertwined. And it's just so great. But he's also part of my diocese. And so they know him really well. And so I think we're kind of working through that right now, is saying, hey, if these sorts of things come up again, how about we have him take it? And I'm like, that's probably a good idea, because he knows me really, really well. And here's the thing. I'm like, if I have sinned in something, call me on it.
Yeah.
Call me on it. And then there's areas, have I sinned? Are they accusing me of sinning? Again, in this particular case with Harvest, I hadn't even published. So it just hit me completely out of left field. But with anything I publish, have I sinned? Have I done something wrong? If I have, I want to be held accountable for that. I want to, know. And then there's judgment issues. Yeah. And those are things that we can discuss. And to be honest, I think a lot of people in ministry don't understand what someone like me does. It's a little messy, and some people are called, I really think, to be peacemakers, and they're blessed, right? I mean, that's wonderful. And there's times when I wish that was more my calling, because I don't like engaging in battle, but this is a lot of battle sometimes. And so I think it makes Christians uncomfortable. And I think we've lost prophetic voice in the church. I think we've lost the role of the prophetic voice. And I think we need to recapture it. I mean, you look at our church right now and the rampant unholiness that's going on.
Yep. And sexual abuse, the cover-up of sexual abuse in particular is grievous. And what I see happen, I've seen happening among even like guys in our tribes, guys that we lock arms with, denominationally, in the Reformed community, sort of not acknowledging that something stinks. Yeah. And it burns us up. And I'm not really sure why we got into this state. I have theories. But yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree.
So like we talked about like those that are criticizing, right? I mean, what would you say to those that are, in some ways, it looks like they're rejoicing at the chaos and the potential fall of James, right? Yeah. What would you say to those people?
Well, I think you have to understand where some of them are coming from. At least, I mean, I know there's 24 to maybe over 30 people, if I'd count up everybody who went on the record with me and that talked to me and shared their story. And I've gotten together with them on occasions and we've prayed together. They have lived this. Yeah. They have lived this, some of them for a very long time, for years. I know the two guys from the Elephant's Den, which, by the way, I didn't even know before April of this year. I'd never.
Oh, you never heard? Oh.
Never. I had gone to the Elephant's Den website a few times. But no, I'd never met them. I'd never, really well, I still haven't met one of them. We've talked on the phone numerous times, but I've never met him in person. And the other one I just met actually a few weeks ago for the first time in person. But they've been through a tremendous amount. Both of them had to leave jobs they loved as a result of what they reported on. They have been targets of all sorts of, hate and nastiness. They've paid a price, a really steep price. And their methods are different than mine. They report different. They're not trained journalists.
They're not journalists.
No, they're not, but they're good guys. They really are good guys. And I've come to love them and appreciate them. I really have. And one of them, he commented on James MacDonald recently. He was scheduled to speak at the Southern Baptist Convention Pastors Conference. Mm-hmm. And after the story came out, James
stepped down.
Stepped out. Right. He stepped
scare
out.
Quotes on that.
But I know at that point, one of the guys from the Elephant's Det posted, I forget what the comment was, but he was kind of pointing out the irony of, I think it was about integrity or something like that. And somebody kind of came down on him. It's like, this isn't a laughing matter. And he's like, you know what? I've lived this for like the past 6 years. Let me appreciate the irony, Mm-hmm. And I felt like they kind of jumped down his throat. And so I don't think he was rejoicing.
These are people that need vindication, though, right? These are people that they need God's support to, like David prays for this, right? Mm-hmm. Vindicate me amidst my accusers. But I think what Jimmy's talking about, though, are like the observers, like, the people that are watching, the people that the internet consumers who sort of like really get off on somebody falling hard.
Yeah, the idea that there's issues or trouble, or they just
watch this big guy go down.
Exactly, yeah.
What do you say to those people?
Well,
as a reporter,
to me, it's like coming by. This is a car wreck.
Yeah,
and I've never liked how people gawk at car wrecks and things. I feel like this is a horrible thing. Why are you gawking at it like it's entertainment? This is the same way. This is a horrible train wreck. Car wreck, whatever you want to call it. This is awful.
Yeah.
Nobody rejoices in this. All of us grieve in this. When you see the amount of people that have been wounded by this, what it does to the cause of Christ. To me, somebody asked me, why do you do this? Why do I do this? Because I care about God's reputation. I care about the kingdom. If I'm offended by this behavior, how does God feel? Right. This is his name. This is his church. And so to me, this is a horrible tragedy, and we should grieve over it. But at the same time, the people that I've seen that have been the most engaged on social media are people that are, a lot of them reached out to me and have told me their stories. I get these private messages all the time, and and then I hear their story, and I grieve for them. There's just an awful lot of pain in the whole thing. And so I think, if somebody's watching this and enjoying it and finding this entertaining, that's just wrong.
Yeah, their heart's definitely in the wrong spot. It was interesting because I don't think I've mentioned it on our podcast, but over the years, there's been a steady stream of people. It's probably been now 2 years at the most since it's happened. But I've had staff from Harvest come and talk to me and ask for help. Like they don't know what to do. They're like, how do I handle this situation? Here's what's happening in our leadership culture. Can I transition out? Like I'm afraid. Like how am I supposed to do? And they're coming to me because I'm local, right? And so and somehow they like the way that we do something here or whatever. So I've been hearing from people that are there, that in leadership positions saying like, we don't know what to do. We feel really stuck. And then we have
quit your job.
So yeah.
No, honestly, this is like, if I have one irritation, it happened at Moody with professors saying I can't talk because I might lose my job. And now there's people like, I don't know what to do. I have to stay here. Quit your job. I feel like jobs have become idols. I lost my job. I've survived. Life doesn't come to an end. You can lose your job. it just irritates me because I'm like, we have gotten to the point where it's okay to say, yeah, I'm complicit in all sorts of evil. And yeah, I've looked the other way for years, but I could have lost my job. And that's an excuse that's okay. It's not.
Well, I mean, again, we're actually called to suffer. We will suffer, especially if we're doing what's right. And sometimes it means making the hard decision. So maybe we can end on this, at least in terms of the issues that we wanted to talk to you about here briefly. Back to this issue of transparency and leadership. Why is transparency so important for now? Like, we're Baptists, we think that there needs to be congregational involvement and accountability. We're not down without some sort of built-in accountability there. But why is transparency important for all leaders, and where is transparency most critical? In your assessment as an expert on abusive churches.
I'm a journalist. I'm not a church government expert, but I will say that transparency. One of the guys I talked to in my reporting was Rusty Leonard, and he runs an organization called Ministry Watch. And he's so big on transparency, especially financial transparency. And that's because it's just so easy to abuse. And, money being the root of or the love of money being the root of all kinds of evil. I do think transparency is absolutely a must, especially when you're working with millions of dollars. When you get these huge budgets, financial transparency is critical, and there needs to be a lot of things and a lot of safeguards in place. And that's the way you safeguard yourself, you safeguard your church. You want to be above even the appearance of evil. And that's the way you do it, is by just being transparent about all things. I think as evangelicals, and this is, we've kind of gotten really huge on like transparency and accountability with like our relationships. I'm not sure it's helping that much, because we're still having sexual scandals left and right. But for some reason, financially,
no, we don't.
We're
good. No, that's fine.
And even right now, it's like, Julie, if you could get the Me Too story, that would do it. Like, we don't care about like just spiritual abuse of people. We don't care about emotional abuse. We don't care about financial abuse. I think those areas are certainly important, our relationships. But I think we've kind of gone overboard with those. And I think we've really, really fell down when it comes to financial transparency. And I think church governance, how decisions are made, there's just way too much secrecy in church boards.
So, Julie, if people want to follow what you're doing, like if they want to follow your writing, your ministry, your work, how do they connect with you on social media? Where do they find you online?
Yeah, they can go to Julie Roys, ROYS.com, and you can sign up there. You get all the blog updates, newsletter, and all that if you sign up. Also on social media, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, at Reach Julie Roys is the way to
so they can reach you.
They can reach me.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, good.
That way. I have a contact form on my website as well. Love to hear from people and love to engage. So I encourage people to do that. Cool.
Well, we're going to be linking to your articles, and we follow you online. We appreciate what you're doing. We're grateful that you don't. You're not relishing in. You're not a gotcha. Journalist. Scare quotes. You're reporting. I believe you're reporting because you care. You care about God. You care about the truth. You care about people. And that is, for me, I know it's supposed to be the glory of God. That's the most, and that's, maligned. When God gets a bad name, it's supposed to be the thing that hurts the most. But usually what hurts me first is people being hurt. Like it's a bit closer to my face. And so like that grieves me. And then it helps me then to see the glory of God, being obscured in some way. We believe that is what motivates you. And so we're grateful for it. And for all you people out there asking like, why ain't she doing the Matthew 18 and all that? Now there you go. You got your answer.
There you go. Stop it.
Yeah, it's just like, go do something.
But they did do the Matthew 18. I think that needs to be said. No, those elders.
They all did.
They all did. Yeah.
Julie can't be doing the Matthew 18 thing. They all did it, and there was no And listen, we definitely don't. We joke around about local churches and whatnot in a generally friendly way. But when it comes to lead, and some of the best people I know are at Harvest. I know that like some of the most amazing Christians I know are at Harvest. But that style of leadership for us is very questionable, if not outright toxic and dangerous. So we've always been really honest about that. But what we do want to see is God glorified and people healed, and we want to see righteousness established. And man, what an awesome testimony if we could see a complete revival and turnaround at the leadership level at that church. That'd be amazing. That would be amazing. You could only point to God for that, because that doesn't happen.
That's right.
That historically rarely happens. So we can pray about that. You guys, though, can engage us in this particular episode online. Jimmy, how do they do it?
You could follow us online, Instagram,
Are you sure?
Twitter. Yep.
You sounded confused.
Yeah, you can't. When I do the lead in, you don't have the whole thing.
Yeah.
So let me lead in.
I let in, and you just go. I teed it up for you.
Instagram, Twitter, @DocAndDevo, or on Facebook /Doctor Devotion. You can head to the website, drdevotion.com. There you can contact us. You can sign up for the email blast, or hit up the store. I hate you. I hate you so much. Why are you such a jerk? Why are you the way
That's how you laugh when you have a cold.
Who did not love you as a child? Can you investigate that?
Well, I don't feel loved by you.
I feel loved by you.
Is that beyond your skill set?
You need to encourage me more. Maybe I wouldn't attack you like that. There you go. How else? What else?
You can head on over to jofostore.com and grab some gear. Fresh pod every Monday and Thursday. Blog posts on Wednesdays. Video content when available. Later.